EPG program in Japanese. Welcome back to Communication Through Translation. Onyakutsu no Communication. The next module, that is module number 14, Concepts and Techniques. 6 in this series, and with regard to techniques, this is the second module. This module has been developed together with Rajat, one of my trainees of OTTP, Ongoing Translation Training Program at CSCR Nisker. His contribution in the data collection and base work. Let's try to see what we have done in the previous module. We did the back or the reverse translation, which works, but quality remains wanted, and the methodology does not help much in professional pursuits. Application of 5W1H is a logical approach, and by adding some improvisations, comprehension and reframing become easy. It provides segment or unit-wise equivalences. 5W1H technique helps in identifying the inter and intra-elemental relations of units, particularly in complex sentences in domains which are difficult, such as patent. The questions can come from anywhere. It can come from a ready-to-use database also, but essentially it is a dynamic mechanism and one evolves the questions in the process. Translation done by this technique may not have very good readability. The accuracy, however, is ensured, which is a prerequisite for the discipline of translation. The concept and techniques we have been talking about for quite some time, so you are already clear about concepts and you have seen one technique in the previous module. What we are doing is continuation of that. The techniques in translations are introduced here using analytical approach, that is comprehend and practice the translation as an academic endeavor. Scientific approach, that is organize the learning and apply it appropriately. And here the translation techniques which we are covering is called frame capture transfer technique. The objectives, the only difference as compared to the previous one is that in the case of 5W1H, under the professional pursuits, it was logical approach for the 5W1H, which becomes a systematic approach to comprehend the content in this particular module. This also eases the pressure on the practitioner and it helps in rendering accurate translation with a good degree of readability. The outcome is same, practicing scholars of translation who can deliver value-added translation and help in generating the realistic theories through practice, and it's a trainer's trainer program. Let's see the outline representation of this translation technique. We have already talked in brief about these three techniques in the previous module. Let's talk more about the frame capture transfer in this particular module. Let me try to introduce the technique through some simple examples, that is frame and other components in a particular sentence. Let me ask Rajat to read out this sentence because the font is small for me.
日本のその他の先進的な技術や製品を含めて比較的早期に国産化を果たした。
So it's 国産化を果たした is the catch here, first catch. And if we see 国産化を果たした and we have micro and macro frames here, if we try to see the syntactic components in this sentence, Rajat, can you tell what can be a macro frame or what can be micro frame, or what are the elements that are, but first tell me what are the macro and micro possible frames in this?
The macro frame is the main frame of this sentence, and in this sentence it is 日本は国産化を果たした. Whereas the micro frame are the smaller frames apart from the macro frame which are present in the sentence, and in this case it is 技術や製品を含めて. That is one micro frame which we can see in this sentence.
Okay.
But sir, I would be very grateful to you if you could explain it in a little more detail.
Okay. See this, we'll be talking about the overall structure of macro-micro frame a little later, but let me give a brief about the macro and micro frame. as the word or as the term suggests, macro and micro. Macro means the broader. It covers the overall sense in the sentence, what is being talked overall. Now somebody will ask you when you don't understand the original sentence, you do not know the translation. So how will you capture the overall sense? Now the hint here is that there is a topic given, there is a subject given here. That topic or the subject in this particular case is Nihon wa. It has got to have something which is connected directly to it, linked directly to it. And if you see carefully here, koksanka o hatashita, soukini koksanka o hatashita. Before that it is saying hikakute ki soukini. Hikakute ki souki is comparatively early. O fukumete, before that he is saying sono hokano senshin tekina gijitsu ya seihin o fukumete. Senshin tekina gijitsu ya seihin o fukumete is targeting the components or the objects. So including A and B, including these components, relatively or comparatively at an early stage, it did koksanka. Koksanka is indigenization. So obviously Japan carried out indigenization. So Japan indigenization using the subject and the verb make the macroframe. About the microframe, microframe can be, in this example it's not coming, but if we recall some of the examples which we will be actually taking up in the later stage also, and which were covered in the previous module, there are more number of verbs, there are more steps in the process. Now if we see those sub-verbs or the process step verbs are actually linked to the same subject. So the microframe can be a subset of macroframe also, and microframe can be an independent frame also, which can be an adjectival clause also, and it can be an independent frame also. Let's see some more examples and that will clarify you about the micro and the macro frames. So here we found that the macro frame, as Rajat just said, Nihon wa koksanka o hatashita, and micro frame, if we see, it says gijitsu ya seihin of kumete as one, and then there are certain things that can be kept aside while translating or while comprehending the original sentence, and that is sono hokano, senshin tekina, hikakute ki, and soukini. Now out of this there are few which are acting as adjectives and there are few which are acting as adverbs. All adjectives and adverbs can be kept aside without any problem while translating. This is the key to make the translation original sentence quite simpler for the user. Now, if I say more clearly, then you can say that the macro frame Nihon wa koksanka o hatashita, if you translate this, and then in between, that is the micro frame, in between if you bring the micro frame, that is including technology and the product. And when finally rendering the translation, then you can say sono hokano senshin tekina. So sono hokano is the other, senshin tekina is progressive or the advancing or advanced, and hikakute ki soukini is a very simple adjective. It's comparatively, relatively at an early stage. So the key here is that the macro and micro frames and replaceable components all through are the key in a sentence to catch. I think this is what Rajat brought in. It's same combination of components said in a different way or in a different frame. How do they behave? See, let's see an example in the source language, that is Japanese in this case. Watashi ga kono keiki o tsukutta. Now there are elements like watashi, kono keiki, tsukutta. Rest are particles. Now the same sentence, watashi ga kono keiki o tsukutta, can be said in another way, that is kono keiki wa watashi ga tsukutta, or kono keiki o tsukutta no wa watashi desu. These are the three ways or the three patterns in which the same components can be used to express almost the same meaning. Now what happens actually is, if you see carefully the frame, in these three cases, the first one is A ga B o tsukutta, second is B wa A ga tsukutta, it's reversing. A ga B o tsukutta, and the second is B wa A ga tsukutta, and the third is B o tsukutta no wa A desu. So it's much different. This means that there's a difference in the nuance carried with the help of frame. So if you want to communicate a particular nuance, it is the frame which gives you that nuance. You may say it the way you say it also, but we are trying to tell you a technique, and the technique here is it is the frame which tells you how to communicate a particular nuance. Now, if we see the equivalence, the first one is A made B, the second one is as for B, A made, and the third is it is A who made B. Now you can see at least the first and the third one, the emphasis is totally different, the nuance is quite different. In the case of second also, A made it. In the case of first sentence, we are saying A made B, very simple. In the case of second, we are saying A made it. What we are talking about is B. So there is a difference in the nuance which frame helps in capturing or transferring. The translation, you can say I made this cake, as for this cake, I made it, it is I who made this cake. And va particle determines the focus. We have discussed this earlier in module 6, that va particle is a subject particle or the topic particle about which the matter revolves in that particular sentence. The misconception, that is the three sentences have almost same meaning, remains. So the frame understanding will clarify this misconception, and difference in focus actually gives different nuance, and it is the focus which is expressed through the frame. The proper frame capture and transfer is significant, is the key that we have learned here. And let's see now some examples or some basic terms first to understand the capture transfer technique or the frame capture transfer technique. The basic terms are organized in this way, that there is a sentence, and what Rajat asked a while ago, one way of segmentation or one way of bifurcating this sentence is divide it into one macroframe, and there could be more than one or one microframe. Then, as I explained earlier also, that macroframe gives you the broad or the main frame, whereas the microframe gives you microframe covers various things, and one could be that it's a subset of the macroframe, it is an adjectival or independent frames also. This particular concept is actually simple, but you will understand it much better when you see some examples. So let's see some examples. We are picking up the same sentence as it was picked up in the previous module. So aisiwa gokinno naibu kozoni ebinde tasoka shori nadono sosani yotte toksega ohabani kojosuru. And the hint here is that pick the final verb first, and the final verb in this particular case is kojosuru, and then link it to the part where it is connected the most, and that is it is connected to toksega kojosuru, and somebody says no, it is connected to aisiwa kojosuru. That is the first one. Fine. So let's put it together, put it separately. There are two, that is aisiwa kojosuru and toksega kojosuru. Aisiwa kojosuru, IC improves. Okay, no problem. Toksega kojosuru, characteristics improve. So isn't it characteristics of IC or characteristics in IC improve? Yes or no? So because this is a basic pattern, so we need to combine it. That means this need not be segregated or this need not be separated, and the pattern comes here, aisiwa toksega kojosuru. Now this is the macro frame here, and the pattern is vaga suru. In this case you have probably seen vaga this, do hanaga nagai this, but the same can be extended to vaga and ending in the suru. Now let's try to see the microframes in this sentence. See, we have already done aisiwa toksega ohabani kojosuru. The remaining part will give you the microframes. First, let's try to do some rationalization. See, aisiwa toksega ohabani kojosuru. Ohabani is extra. Ohabani, if we remove it, it doesn't create any problem in understanding. So adverb can be taken out for the time being, and we find that the macro frame actually is aisiwa toksega kojosuru. Then next is gokin no naibu kozoni ebinde. So it is de is this ebinde, and then tasoka shori nado no sosa ni yotte. If we see, okay, come back. Let's see, this is gokin no naibu kozoni ebinde also has a naibu kozo. So naibu kozo, naibu is extra here. So naibu can again be dropped. It can be kept aside for some time. So microframe 1 comes as gokin no kozo ni ebinde, and The remaining part, Tasoka Shori Nado no Sosa ni Hotte, is another frame, that is MacroFrame 2, which is independent frame in a way, and not independent exactly, but because there's a ni hotte coming at the end. If we see here, MacroFrame 1 makes sense by itself. MacroFrame 2 is incomplete. Ni hotte, it should have something further, so it is incomplete, but ni hotte itself is an expression. And in this also, Tasoka Shori Nado, this Tasoka Shori, you find it difficult, you can probably remove it and substitute it with something, and that substitution can be A Nado no Sosa ni hotte. Does it sound simpler to you? If it sounds simpler, if it helps you, take out all the difficult terms, particularly nouns, and replace those nouns with something that is familiar to you. ABC is not very good. Some familiar simple word is a better option, but since it is difficult for you to find out a simpler option, let's start with ABC. So we are putting A in place of Tasoka Shori. And now try to organize the information, and the information is, topic here is ICVA, that is as regards IC. MacroFrame is Tokusega Kojo Suru, characteristics improve. And MacroFrame there were two. One was Gokin no Kozo ni Ebinde is sensitive to structure of alloy A Nado no Sousa ni hotte through operations such as A. Has it helped you or no? Rajat? Now try to put it together. See, we have some certain elements which have been kept aside. We will add those elements at a later stage. Those elements are adjectives and adverbs only, so won't make much difference even if they are added at a later stage. But we have caught actually, or we have captured the both macro as well as MacroFrames accurately. Now let's try to line them up. So as regards IC, because it's a topic, so we are keeping it aside. Characteristics improve is sensitive to structure of alloy through operations such as A. I think this flow itself is making some sense. So let's join them. As regards IC, is sensitive to structure of alloy through operations such as A, characteristics improve. Flow is okay, but does not give a true sense, So let's do some more work on this. Now let's first place the elements or the components which were taken aside for the time being, and there was some substitution done that also bring back the original word, and we find as regards IC is sensitive to internal structure of alloy through operations such as multi-phase processing. Characteristics improve considerably. The flow has also improved by adding the components which were taken aside or the substituted words. Can we do something more? Let's do some fine tuning, and then we'll see. As regards IC, it is added here. It is sensitive to internal structure of alloy, and through operations such as multi-phase processing, again add its here. Its characteristics improve considerably. Now you can see the additions are it and an its. Not so difficult, but the flow is come. Now you can see the flow, and the end result is that this makes some sense. So here you can see, for example, for the they, you can refer back to the module 7 for the explanation with regard to they. We could see here very clearly that the segregation, segregating the topic in the beginning itself, it serves a purpose in understanding or in comprehending, because it gets applied all over. And fine tuning, which is done at the end of the sentence, I would like to put a word of caution here that it must be done in a pragmatic manner. It should be minimal. Make all efforts to avoid extra meaning or shade to be added from your side. You are a translator. You're not supposed to add what you feel about some sentence or what you feel that the author wanted to say. If at all you want to put, then put it as a translator note at the end, but don't put it in the translation, because that is not ethical as far as the profession of translation is concerned. Let's see some more examples. Let's go to first MacroFrame identification, example 2, and yes, I'll request Rajat once again, can you read the sentence?
Judai tetra hydrofuranとアンモニアを触媒の存在化基礎で反応させて ビロリジンを製造する方法が次のように収集提案されている。
I hope you could understand, the voice was not coming very clear. There were some mistakes made. For example, Pirorigin was read as Birorigin. It's not that the text is too far and you're not able to read, or the font is small, you're not able to read. It's basically you are losing confidence. For example, tetrohydrofuran. So tetrohydrofuran, I'm reading it ra as ro. Why? Because there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 katakana listed together, and not even one, or maybe tetra in fact is known but not so clearly. So when there are 3 elements put together, in this particular case it is tetrahydrofuran. So 3 elements in one compound, and absolutely in katakana it's difficult to read, and when you're reading continuously you find it difficult to read, and ultimately what happens that you do not know who is doing what in this sentence. It is for this reason that frame capturing becomes very important, or keeping aside certain elements become important, or substituting the difficult terms or compounds or words with something that is more familiar becomes more important. Very simple. For example, if I say Jurai, A and then to, A to B. And why A to B? Because there are 2 nouns we are saying. For the sake of understanding, we can drop even one noun. So it's A only. So Jurai A o shokubai no sonzai ka kisode hanno sasete Pirorigin, difficult, so change it to B. Sasete, B o seizo suru hoho ga tsugi no yoni shushu teian sareteru. Immediately you get, oh, teian sareteru. Shushu teian sareteru. Nani ga teian sareteru? Hoho ga tsugi no yoni teian sareteru. Which hoho? Seizo suru hoho. We did this 5W1H in the previous module. Let's focus on frame capturing using this sentence, and you will find the hint, as I just said, is coming from the final verb. It is directly linked to something, and that directly linked to something is hoho ga teian sareteru and ga sareteru, but the pattern here is ga sareteru. It's a pattern. In this particular case, hoho ga teian sareteru is the macroframe. Frame, of course, you can drop further things also, but this is the frame. Let's see the microframes now. We have done something about adjectival clause in the previous module also. So that we actually kept aside at a later stage. Now, why to keep it at a later stage when you are not translating it in the beginning? Drop it in the beginning only. The sentence becomes much lighter. So let's try to find out or identify the adjectival clause right in the beginning. But how do you find out is a question mark. In this particular case, if I see hoho ga tsugi no yoni shushu teian sareteru, and we said macroframe as hoho ga tsugi no yoni hoho ga teian sareteru. Now when hoho ga teian sareteru and hoho, before hoho it says something o seizo suru hoho. So obviously it's an adjectival clause. Now keep aside this whole adjectival clause and you will find that the only part left with you is hoho ga tsugi no yoni shushu teian sareteru. I don't think now you actually need any method to translate this. It's so simple, you can translate. So what I wanted to tell you is that if you can take out one part of the frame which can be kept aside for the time being, it becomes simpler to translate. It's something like driving to a long distance destination of, say, for example, 500 kilometers. Sounds, it's too long or too far off or too difficult. Divide it. Drive only for 50 kilometers, have a break. After that, think that you're starting again. It remains for 450, then again 50. And finally, when you have reached 450 kilometers, then you know that you have only 50 kilometers left. It becomes very simple. So it's basically the psychology works behind this. So make it simple by taking aside the components, the frames that can be kept aside for the time being. And in this case also, if you say hoho ga tsugi no yoni shushu teian sareteru, it was clear, but make it more simple. Shushu teian sareteru, shushu goes out, and it becomes hoho ga tsugi no yoni teian sareteru. It's more sleek now. Now let's see this one. you have ho ga teyan sareteru, and there is a component called tsugi no yoni. Can you see? It's a subset of the overall macro frame. It's within the macro frame, and then it comes out as a subset tsugi no yoni. And in fact, I would say tsugi no yoni is a unit. So if you know the unit, tsugi no yoni means as follows or as listed below, then there is no problem at all. You can just keep it in your mind aside and keep translating the rest of the part. Now let's see the what we had left in the early step, that is the adjectival clause. Jurai tetra hydrofuranto ammoniato o shokubai no sonzai ka kisode hanno sasete pirorigin o seizo suru hoho. If we see here, there are some elements that can be easily dropped. For example, jurai, it's a adverbial noun. Then if I leave out, then the verb here is hoho, and if you try to pick out, then it is pirorigin o seizo suru. The hoho goes with that, as because hoho actually has gone in the beginning. So this is some duplication. We are talking about a method that manufactures. So pirorigin o seizo suru is one frame. Tetra hydrofuran to ammonia to o shokubai no sonzai ka kisode hanno sasete is another frame. So we have two micro frames, and there are certain things that can be, again, if you want, you can drop also, keep aside also, you can substitute also. Both are possible. You try both separately. Basically what happens in the substitution process, when you substitute a complex or difficult element with something which is similar, which is familiar to you, basically you lower the degree of unfamiliarity to a certain extent, and that what it means is that the familiarity increases. Familiarity increases means you feel the sentence you know already, so that psychological factor goes out, and you need to apply your mind only in a rational way or logical way to translate. If we look at the the final frame here, it is A to B o C de hanno saste, because it is C basically is a condition here. So under C, hanno sasete D o seizo suru. D is seizo suru is manufactured. Now let's try to organize this information in the tabular form. The macro frame is ho hoga teyan sareteru. Method is proposed. Micro frame tsugi no yoni as follows: A to B o C de hanno sasete. A and B are made to react. In C, under C, you will have to see the context. Then the choice of preposition will be decided. D o seizo suru, manufacture D. And if we line up all these elements now, method is proposed as follows: A and B are made to react in C, manufacture D. And let's see, can we do some fine tuning? Or first, let's try to bring back the lost or the elements that were kept aside, or the substituted elements also. So it's various method becomes various method. So various method, I think, should be R here now, because various is there, so it should be plural, so needs to be corrected here. Various methods are proposed so far as follows: tetrahydrofuran and ammonia are made to react in presence of catalyst in gaseous phase, manufacture pyrrolidine. It does make sense, but some issues are there in the flow, so we need to do some fine tuning. Various methods, S gets as plural because it's plural, so you have R here in place of is. So various methods are proposed so far as follows, wherein now this is a style of transferring the subframes from Japanese to English. If you put wherein, it helps in connecting the subframes or the microframes in a very natural flow, wherein tetrahydrofuran and ammonia are made to react in the presence, may be better, in the presence of catalyst in gaseous phase to manufacture pyrrolidine. Now if you see, because various was there, so method was not correct, so this is very logical modification. S has been added, is becomes R is also very logical. It's wherein which is added here, and the purpose to manufacture pyrrolidine. This 2 is added here. Without 2, Meaning, of course, one may understand, but the flow is not very good. And it's a wherein which is learned here. Now, we have added wherein here to connect the adjectival clause. As I just explained to you, fine tuning as made here, I have said it in the previous example also, should be a very pragmatic approach based fine tuning. It should be minimal, and you should not put anything or any shade from your side to add value, because this could be counterproductive in the final quality. And again, I would say that the macro and micro frames undergo inter and intertranspositioning to suit the needs of the target language. It's basically the target language frame in our mind. To suit that frame, we may do the transpositioning. Let's see another example, and the example is same as the previous one. It's kono yo na kachion sait ga natorium no arukari kinzoku de aru foja sait gatawa kono mama deba shokubai kasse ga hikui no de ion o koukan suru koto ni yotte kasse o koujo saseru koto ga dekiru. We have done 5W1H on this earlier. Now we are doing frame. So try to keep that learning aside for the time being and focus on frame capturing in this particular case. So you have to see where to begin with. Begin with is actually same, that is, look at the verb, final verb, and see where it is getting directly linked to, and we find that you are getting kaseo kojo saseru koto ga dekiru. So koto ga dekiru, what koto ga dekiru? Can do. What can do? Kojo saseru koto ga dekiru. So this is the basically verb. Now the directly linked thing is kaseo, and there could be foja sait gatawa. So which mean there are two frames, or there are two ways you can try to catch the macro frame, and you see here foja sait gatawa kojo saseru koto ga dekiru. Not wrong if you translate it as it is. Foja sait type can be improved. Well, possible. It's like shirt can be improved. It's like sugar can be improved. It's like quality can be improved. If we say yes, possible. But if we say sugar can be improved, it's fine. But if I say the whiteness of sugar can be improved, or if I say the grain structure of sugar can be improved, or if I say grain structure in sugar can be improved, does it make more sense to you? That is what the vaga pattern is in Japanese. And here we see it clearly, kaseo kojo saseru koto ga dekiru. That means in the case of foja sait type, there is something called kase. I don't know what is that for the time being. It's activity I know, but let's say we don't know what it is. There is some improvement being caused on that particular noun in the case of foja sait gata. That means actually this cannot be segregated. The two are actually same. So we need to combine the two, and the main frame comes as foja sait gata wa kaseo kojo saseru koto ga dekiru. And as in the previous case, vaga suru. In this case, it is not vaga suru, it is vaga saseru koto ga dekiru. So too long, so vaga dekiru should have been the basic pattern here, but that's a very minor thing. Let's go to the next slide to see the micro frames in this particular example. If you remember that we found that there was something causing problem in this case, and that was the adjectival clause, even in the 5W1H method. Now we have already done the macro framing, so let's do once again that particular component. Adjectival clause is kept aside, and from here the foja sait gata wa kono mama deva shokubai kase. Kono mama deva as it is, it's a unit. So it's a unit very clearly. So kono mama deva will always be translated as it is. So let's keep it aside, and we find it becomes simpler, smaller. Foja sait gata wa shokubai kase ga hikui no de ion o koukan suru koto ni yotte kase o kojo saseru koto ga dekiru. We can divide it. For example, foja sait gata wa kaseo kojo saseru koto ga dekiru is something which we got in the previous slides, somewhere 2 or 3 slides before, and that was the macro frame. Now let's see the other one. Shokubai kase ga hikui. This is also okay, but if I keep node aside, then it's not getting linked to anything. So let's keep node also with this. So shokubai kase ga hikui node is one micro frame. Ion o koukan suru koto ni yotte is the second micro frame. This is almost same as the previous case. The MacroFrame 1 and MacroFrame 2 are parts of the MacroFrame. Both are expressions with meaningful right hand parts missing. You know what I mean here is that in the first MacroFrame, the node is coming at the end. That means you are saying node, but you are not saying the consequence. The sentences or the expression is incomplete. Similarly, in the MacroFrame 2, kotoni yotte should have something after that which is not coming here. That means this expression is also not complete. Now we have konoyo na kachion saite ga natorium no arukari kinzaku de aru. Looks like one frame itself, but can we drop some irrelevant or something which irrelevant from the point of capturing the frame? Konoyona can be added at any stage, so it's taken aside. No arukari kinzaku is also extra. It's duplication in fact, so that also is taken out. Now what is left here is kachion saite ga natorium de aru. Much simpler. You have MacroFrame, Micro 1, Micro 2 and Micro 3. You can see here very clearly that the topic can be applicable to microframes as well. In fact, it is not can be, it is applicable to the microframes as well, which reasserts or reaffirms your understanding that the topic, that is the va particle topic, it goes all through the sentence, it gets applied all through the sentence. And let's go to the next process, that is organizing this content in a tabular form. The topic is listed here first, then the MacroFrame is listed here, and the 3 microframes are listed here. I think there's no doubt about this. It's so organized information. Line them up and you see, as regards faucet type, cation site is sodium, catalytic activity is low, therefore through exchanging of ions. Through exchange of ions sounds better, but here it's a verb use, so we are retaining the verb exchanging of ions. If you see later on, for better readability, you can change it because it will not change the tone in the ultimate content. And exchanging of ions, activity can be increased. Now, let's see if we can do something to fine tune it. See, let's try to bring in the elements that we have taken out for the time being to make it complete sentence. Maybe fine tuning may not be required or less required. So it becomes, as regards this kind of, for konoyona, this kind of faucet type, cation site is sodium alkali metal. Alkali metal was taken out. Then as it is, this was taken out, it's brought back. As it is, catalytic activity is low, therefore through exchanging of ions, activity can be increased. This makes good degree of sense. Let's do some degree of fine tuning. You can see the green elements here, wherein it has and its, wherein I have explained in the previous example, it helps in connecting the adjectival clause or the clause which you want to bring after the macroframe, and it has or its activity are the minor additions. And if we see here, now the continuity is as regards this kind of faucet type, wherein cation site is sodium alkali metal, it has low catalytic activity as it is. Maybe the comma is extra here, and therefore through exchanging of ions, its activity can be increased. So minor modifications like dropping comma before as it is, and maybe through exchange of ions, because when you say through exchange of ions, it's actually giving the sense of verb only. The flow becomes better, but here we have succeeded in communicating a difficult sentence through the help of frame capturing and frame transfer with some amount of transpositioning and additions from your own side for fine tuning purposes. The rules remain same. The wherein has been added here. Topic segregation at the beginning is helpful, and fine tuning, a word of caution for that, has to be done in a very pragmatic manner. Fine tuning should not make substantial changes in the target sentence vis-a-vis the original sentence. Now, if we look at the three here, that is the original sentence and the 5W1H translation and the translation based on the frame capture transfer. I think I will leave this for your reading, you can read it at your end, but what I can say here very clearly that the 5W1H was a logical methodology. If we compare the two, we find that the accuracy is maintained in both the techniques. It's not compromised. Though 5W1H is more logical, but the accuracy remains in the case of frame transfer also. The readability is better in the case of 5W1H because the frame capture and frame transfer is basically a mechanical method, and a person who is new to a particular subject or who is in the field of translation is a new entrant will find application of this method much easier and much safer, because he will not be able to apply the 5W1H so easily unless and until some degree of comfort has been achieved through some practice. So that way it is helpful, it becomes easier. The ease of doing is higher in the case of frame capture and transfer, but we would like to say very clearly here that the logical approach is getting slightly compromised in the case of frame capture and transfer because of, as I said, because it is difficult. It's mechanical method, so it's difficult to bring in that touch in the final output. We'll try to compare the two a bit more in the next module when we try to add 5W1H to the frame. Therefore, let's sum up the learnings of this particular frame. With this particular module, the frame capture and transfer technique is a mechanical method and can be implemented successfully even if one does not have adequate subject knowledge, or if one is a beginner. Beginner means, of course, that he knows the Japanese well, but he's beginner in the translation domain as a professional. Proper frame capturing and transfer is significant as different frame renders different nuances. Then topic segregation, if it is possible, and identification of final verb as well as linked elements at the initial stage help in applying this technique. The frame capture and transfer technique helps in ensuring the accuracy in translation, though the readability aspect may require some more finishing touch. It shows that topic is applicable to all macro as well as micro frames, and micro frames undergo inter and inter-transpositioning basically to suit the target language frames. Fine-tuning and additions at the end should be minimal and pragmatic without overindulgence. Do not think that you can add value to the substance from your own side. If at all you have some additional information, put it as a translator note and let the content expressed by the author get transferred as it is in the target language. This technique ensures accuracy, and the combination with other techniques such as 5W1H, I believe, will be helpful in improving the readability. So would like to finish it here with this, and see you in the module 15. Thank you so much.